And now for starter 4. And this says write an equation that represents the relationship between x and y below. And I'm going to start by finding my rate of change, because I know that that is probably part of my equation. So I'm going to look at my changes in y. So from 1 to 5, it's going up by 4. From 0 to 2, it's going up by 2. From 5 to 15, it's going up by 10. And from 2 to 7, it's going up by 5. So I can tell in both cases here. Remember, my rate of change is my change in y over my change in x. If I'm looking at my first set right here, 4 over 2 simplifies to a 2, and 10 over 5, I took this 10 and that 5, also simplifies to a 2. So I know that my rate of change for this particular function is a 2. So I know that the equation that represents the relationship is going to have something to do with y equals 2x, because remember, the rate of change goes right in front of the x when we're writing it in this form. Now, let's see if that works, if I can just go with the 2 times x. So in order for this to be the right equation, that means that for all my values of x, I can multiply them by 2. Let's see if I'm right. So 0 times 2 is not 1. So even though 2x is part of my equation, I still need to add a little bit more. Well, 0 times 2 is 0. To get from 0 to 1, I would need to add a 1. So I've got a good guess right now that my function rule is probably 2x plus 1. So let's see if that works for all of them. So I'm going to go right here and see. So let's see here. So if that's right, 2x plus 1, that means I should be able to put 2 in for x and add 1, and I'll get 5. So let's see, 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 1, oh, it is 5. Let's double check and make sure it works for just one more. So instead of 2x plus 1, I'm going to do 2 times 7. 2 times 7 is 14, plus 1 is 15. So I know that this is my function rule. For every value of x, I multiply it by 2, and then I add 1 to get my y. Number 2 is asking us to do the same thing, just like I did before. I'm going to start off by finding my rate of change. So I'm going to find my change in y. So to go from a negative 4 to a positive 6, the difference is not 2, like some people might think. Okay, so I got to go negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, all the way up just to get to 0. Then I have to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more to get all the way up to the 6. So if I actually count, I'm actually going up by 10. This one is going from negative 7 to a negative 2. It's going up by 5. So my rate of change, remember my change in y over my change in x. Well, I better make sure I actually have that constant rate of change like I did in the last example. Just to make sure. All right, so from 6 to 10, it's going up by 4. And from negative 2 to 0, it's going up by 2. So now, 10 over 5, because remember it's my change in y over my change in x, will be 2. This 4 over 2 is also a 2. So I know that my rate of change is 2. So because the rate of change is 2, I know that the function rule, remember that another word for function rule is an equation that'll work for all of this table of values. So it has something to do with y equals 2 times x. Because the rate of change is 2. The rate of change always goes in front of the x. So y equals 2 times x. Let's see if that works. Well, negative 7 times 2 is not negative 4. So that means I still need to do something else. So I'm going to do something a little bit different here. Look at this value right here. It says when x is 0, y is 10. So if x is 0, 2 times 0 would be 0. So I've got to add something to 0 to get y to be a 10. Because this part of the table right here tells me that if x is 0, y is equal to 10. So if I put a 0 in for x, 2 times 0 is going to be 0. 0 plus something has to give me 10. Well, that means that Well, 0 plus 10 obviously is 10. So that means that my function rule is I take my x value, I multiply it by 2, then I have to add 10. So remember, when you are trying to find the equation that represents a table of values, one of the best things to do first is to start off by trying to find the rate of change, because you know that the rate of change always goes in front of the x as long as it's a linear function. It means it forms a straight line. Then, once you found your rate of change, see, to get from here to here, do I have to do a little something extra? In this case, if I did 0 times 2 to get 0, then I had to add 10 more. So that means my function rule is y equals 2x plus 10.